So, Jesse, we met about 5 years ago, and when I met you, it was all about a banknote, and you hadn't bought AA000001 of the £5 note craze that had hit Britain. But what did you buy, and what made you pay more than £1,000 for a banknote?
So unfortunately, as much as I did want AA0100000001, there was only one slight problem, and that's I'm not the queen. So the Queen got the first batch, but the Bank of England had an auction, a charity auction, where they were auctioning off the lowest available serial number £5 notes to the public. So I had to be a part of it. You know, I don't know a lot about currency and currency collecting. I've dabbled, but I'm no expert by any means. What I did recognize, though, was an opportunity based on the behavioral finance standpoint of this media craze that people could get a low serial number note when they pull out money out of the ATM, out when they go to Tesco. There could be a chance they get one of the lowest ones. It is possible. And some people have been able to do that. But this was the very start of the craze. I thought and I felt like it was going to explode. And sure enough, it did.
Yeah, I should point out here that I was really quite at the forefront of that media craze. As in, I wrote the story where I saw on eBay that AA01 £5 notes of the new style polymer notes were selling for big bucks online. And then the whole thing just blew wide open. That story was shared millions of times. And that's, of course, how our paths crossed. And then I met up with you when you had your AA quadruple 20 note. And what happened to that note, Jesse?
Yeah, so I paid a pretty penny for that, to say the least. It's the most expensive £5 note I've ever gotten, but the price that I got for it when I sold it on was quite significant, to say the least. I can also say that it was the most awkward transition when we exchanged money I have ever done, because when a guy handed me what he paid for it with a wad of cash and I gave him a £5 note in return, mentally the perception of seeing that transaction play out says none of this makes any sense whatsoever. So the amount, I'll let you tell the story there, but it was worth it, to say the least.
And actually, I think it's really worth pointing out here as well, Jesse, that we touched on this quite a bit in our book, Never Go Broke, which is out on the 6th of May, in which you need to sort of strike when this popularity kind of hill, you know, at the prime point, and make sure that you don't get burnt. And actually, a case in point of this is when you then went to the £10 note Bank of England charity auction, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, with behavioral finance, if you're not on the ground floor, 9 times out of 10, you're a bag holder, or the profit margin isn't as lucrative and exciting. So it's like when a stock takes off and you hear about it in the news. If you hear about a stock taking off in the news, you're already too late. So it was the same thing applied. The £5 note was the first time. And I think the thing is that I took on all the risk because no one knew how much it was going to take off. Whereas when the £10 note auction came on and the £20 note came along, they already knew the success of the £5 note. But unfortunately, the market was so saturated and the prices were so high, is that the profit margin just wasn't worth the risk, even though the risk was smaller, knowing you have that data from the previous auctions. So it's that risk reward of taking a little bit of risk for a potential massive reward, as opposed to a massive risk for a little bit of reward. That's kind of the funny thing about it. So you got to find that sweet spot of, well, and at least in my perspective, I'm a little bit of a gambler. Actually, I'm a massive gambler. But you also want to rein it in a little bit, where this could potentially take off. But if not, and it fails completely, you know what? I'm not too far in on this thing where I could lose everything. That's where you start getting into those problems. So seek those opportunities, but don't go too crazy on it, because if it goes bad, whoo boy, it can go real bad.
I'd love to know what the buyer of your £5 note could now get for it.